James Calloway had always dreamed of owning a home in an upscale American neighborhood, a peaceful and secure place where he could build his future. After years of hard work, he finally achieved that dream. A beautiful two-story colonial-style house in Maplewood Heights, a prestigious suburban enclave in Virginia. The property was immaculate, with a perfectly trimmed lawn, a spacious backyard, and a welcoming front porch. It was everything he had ever wanted. But from the very first day, something felt off. As James unloaded the moving truck, he noticed the subtle but unmistakable stares of his new neighbors. Curtains twitched as unseen eyes peered at him. Conversations on porches fell silent as he walked past. No friendly introductions, no welcoming committee, just an air of silent judgment. The next morning, James barely had time to finish brewing his coffee when a sharp knock echoed through the house. Standing on his porch was a woman in her late 60s, dressed in an immaculate beige suit, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. A golden HOA, Homeowners Association, pin gleamed on her lapel. "Good morning," she said, her tone clipped and authoritative. "I'm Margaret Whitmore, president of the Maplewood Heights HOA." James extended his hand with a polite smile. "Nice to meet you. I know who you are," Margaret interrupted, her eyes flicking past him into the house. "I wanted to go over a few things." She handed him a thick stack of printed documents. HOA guidelines. James skimmed the pages. Rules about lawn maintenance, exterior colors, mailbox designs. Standard stuff. But then Margaret's eyes settled on the moving truck still in the driveway. "That will need to be gone by this evening," she stated. James raised an eyebrow. "It'll be gone once I'm finished unpacking." Margaret nodded, but there was something calculating in her expression. "Good. And just so you're aware, trash bins must be placed at the curb no earlier than 6 a.m. on collection day. I noticed yours were out last night." "I didn't put them out," James replied. "The previous owners must have." Margaret pursed her lips. "I see. Well, in the future, please be mindful. We have rules for a reason." And with that, she turned and walked away. James exhaled slowly. Maybe she was just a typical HOA president. Strict, particular. But the next few days made it clear that Margaret wasn't just particular. She was watching. First, there was a violation notice about an unauthorized vehicle in his driveway, his own car. Then a complaint about his lawn being slightly overgrown, even though it had been freshly mowed. A third notice cited his porch light as too bright, despite it being the exact fixture the previous owners had. By the end of the week, James had collected a neat stack of official complaints for Margaret, all targeting him. It didn't take long for him to realize this wasn't about HOA rules. This was about him. One evening, while taking a walk, James passed a small group of neighbors gathered on a driveway. They grew silent the moment they saw him. A woman offered a forced smile, but no one else acknowledged him. And there, standing in the center, was Margaret, arms crossed, whispering to the others. James didn't need to hear the words to know what was happening. She wanted him gone. The next morning, another violation notice appeared, this time about his trash cans. Bins must be retrieved within 1 hour of collection to maintain neighborhood aesthetics, it read. James frowned. He had picked up his bins at the same time as his neighbors, after work. But apparently, that wasn't good enough. Curious, he decided to test something. The next collection day, he took a slow walk through the neighborhood at 9 a.m. Dozens of bins still lined the curbs, some overflowing. Yet, not a single violation notice on any of them. Just his. James snapped a few pictures and emailed the HOA board, politely asking why his bins were an issue while everyone else's were ignored. No response. 2 days later, Margaret was back at his doorstep, this time with a clipboard in hand. "Something I can help you with?" James asked, leaning against the doorframe. Margaret held up a form. "This is a formal request for you to submit proof of homeownership. We've had complaints." James' stomach tightened. "Complaints?" Margaret nodded, her voice syrupy but sharp. "Neighbors have expressed concerns. They've noticed unusual activity, different cars coming and going, furniture deliveries at odd hours. Some are worried you may be renting this property in violation of HOA regulations. James let out a short laugh. You're kidding. Margaret's face remained expressionless. First off, I own this house. Second, I've lived here less than a month. I'm still moving in. And as for the cars, those are friends and family visiting. Margaret pressed her lips together. Well, we have policies to ensure all homeowners are properly vetted. We'll need to verify your deed. James knew exactly what this was. She hadn't asked any other neighbors for proof of ownership, just him. He kept his voice level. You can pull the records yourself. It's public information. Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly, but she quickly recovered. I'd prefer if you submitted it directly. And if I don't? Margaret's lips curled into something that was supposed to be a smile, but there was no warmth behind it. Then I'll have no choice but to escalate the matter. James exhaled slowly, forcing a smile. I'll think about it. That evening, as James sat on his porch, he saw Margaret at the end of his driveway, talking to a man in a polo shirt, gesturing toward his house. He didn't have to guess what was happening. She was looking for a way to get rid of him. The next morning, James found an envelope in his mailbox. No HOA logo this time. Instead, it was from a law firm. Inside was a formal complaint filed with the county housing authority, accusing him of fraudulent occupancy. Margaret had escalated her attack. James read through the flimsy allegations. No real proof. Just assumptions dressed up in legal jargon. She wanted him exhausted, buried in legal trouble, willing to just walk away. But what she didn't know was that she had just made a grave mistake. That evening, James made a call. Hey, Mike. I need a favor. Mike Ramirez was James' real estate attorney. Sharp, relentless, and twice as ruthless as Margaret ever hoped to be. 3 days later, at an emergency HOA meeting, James sat across from Margaret. The room was full of residents, eager to witness the showdown. When Margaret tried to present her case, James calmly placed his own stack of documents on the table. This is my deed. I legally own my home, he said. And this, he held up another paper, is the deed for another property, 214 Oakwood Drive. And this, he smirked, is the deed for 216 Oakwood Drive. Margaret's house. The room fell silent. James leaned forward, meeting Margaret's stunned expression. Looks like you've been living in my house. And according to HOA records, you're behind on your fees. So tell me, Margaret, who's the real trespasser now?